Are you ready? Stand by.
Welcome to the Three Gun Show, episode 90. I am your host, Dave Hartman, coming at you from Grand Island, Nebraska. My guests this week are three awesome ladies from the world of Three Gun, Heather Miller, Becky Yackley, and Dianna Muller. This episode is quite a change from what you're used to with the Three Gun Show, but I thought the topic is worth sharing with you, the loyal Three Gun Show listener. With the upcoming election on our minds and a constant barrage of proposed legislation to make it more difficult for us to exercise our Second Amendment rights, many of us are left wondering how we can be more effective in making our voices heard. Well, as you will hear in this podcast, Heather, Becky, and Di went to Washington, D.C. to speak to their lawmakers and have come back with a prescription for you to do the same. Links to everything we discuss can be found at threegunshow.com/episode 90, or you can just tap the album art on your smartphone and we'll take you right there. Now, please join me welcoming back to the show, Becky, Dianna, and Heather. All right, so we're here at the Shooters
Competitor housing,
thank you, at Rocky Mountain Three Gun, and I'm sitting here with three ladies that went on to an amazing venture in Washington, D.C. that they're going to tell us about here and why it's important to what we do as Three Gunners. So first off, we'll introduce everyone. To my left, Heather, welcome back to the show.
It's exciting to be back.
Yeah, this is number 2 or 3 for you. So
I think so, yeah. Second or third time. Hopefully it's better than the last few times.
Were they bad?
Oh, I was just scared to death. Talk like a mouse the whole time.
Okay. Well, that's all right. So we have our resident mouse here with us. Becky, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really not mousy. Ask anybody that shoots with me.
Oh, I know.
It's mouthy, not mousy.
Mousy, okay, mouthy. So I've hung out with you quite a bit, but it's when we get the microphone in front of you, you kind of try to tone it down a little bit and
try not to let people record me saying what I want to say. It's usually in my favor.
I've seen you on TV though, and there's like a lot of bleeps when you actually say what you want to say.
I know. That's why I'm trying not to make your show bleeped. I mean, then you'd have to have like a different rating and a different audience.
Right. Well, Nick Atkinson holds the record for bleeps. So if you beat him, then you'll have our crown for the Three Gun Show number of
awesome.
bleeps. Did not expect that. Good one. And Dianna, welcome back to the show.
Hi,
it's great to see you.
Thanks for coming. This is already crashing and burning, aren't we?
No, we're flying high so far. This is great.
You can edit me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just mute your channel. Well, okay, so Dianna, we were talking earlier. You guys went on a couple trips to D.C., and there was like some scouts you sent out, and you came back and brought reinforcements. I'm only familiar with what I see like on Facebook and Instagram of what you guys did, and it looks like there was some fun things that happened. So give us like a quick 20-second sort of roundup of the project that you guys have been working on.
Okay, so last fall, almost a year ago, it's September, between matches on the East Coast, we were in D.C. as tourists, me, Ryan Mitchellix, and a friend of mine that lives out there said, "Do you want to meet your congressman?" I was like, "Sure." I didn't really care one way or the other, but we did, and during that meeting, it was like, I wonder if there's something that we can do as pro shooters to really reach out to these people and educate them and make sure they understand what they're voting on. So that's kind of where it started, and then jumped in, drugged Becky and Hunter Kale and Ryan. We went back out to specifically do that in December. And we felt like there was a positive enough response to that we were like, okay, let's do this. And I started focusing on women because it was really hard to get the guys to do any videos or get excited about what we were doing at all. So I just kicked them to the curb and started focusing on women. But women can bring a stronger impact when we talk about the Second Amendment because we do break that stereotype. So it kind of, and there's more women in Congress than ever. So it kind of fell naturally to the women okay, let's go do this. And I started thinking, okay, if I had one person from every state, because I knew I couldn't go in and talk to Dianne Feinstein from California. But if I took somebody from California, then she couldn't say no.
Right.
So that's what we did. I ended up, well, let's back up. We ended up with team leaders. I knew that I couldn't manage 50 women. And I picked people basically that could go and that were excited about it. And we had 14 people in February go. And of those, 12 came back as team leaders for the July trip this past month, of 35 out of 50 women. So we broke up into little squads like we do when we shoot.
Nice.
And we went out and we met our congressmen, shook their hands, introduced ourselves. I think some of the women really talked about a little bit of policy, but after this past trip, I think that we're really just going to stay focused on the relationships and say, let's go to the range, let's go to the range, let's go to the range. You know, when we go back home, I'll call you, I'll meet you. But it's about building that relationship. So, you know, a lot of these girls, it was the first time that they'd ever done anything like this. It's the first time that they had ever met their offices. And you really have to develop a relationship with the girl at the front. You know, there's a gatekeeper to these members, and you're not going to get anywhere until you make the relationships with the offices. So if we got into the office and we talked to somebody, that was just as good as talking to the member themselves.
So do you guys go in like unannounced, or do you set up appointments beforehand?
Mostly we set up appointments because if they're busy and if, like when we went in July, they were only in the city for a couple, I don't know, some of them for maybe just a few days or the week. So you wanted to make sure that you were not going to waste your effort and your time by just cold calling. But we did do some cold calling where people would say, hey, I'm passing this office. We don't have a gal from this state, so why don't we stop in, knock on the door, and introduce ourselves?
Oh, and so how was the reception when you did that?
Di and I did one together this last time, and I think it was good. It was West Virginia, wasn't it?
I can't remember.
But it was interesting because sometimes you really got a very genuine impression of whether they cared to listen or didn't care to listen. A couple gals had an experience where they came in and someone wanted them to show on the map what part of the district they were in before they'd even chat with them.
Oh, you're kidding.
So there was a variety of responses that you could get based on who was in front. But like Di said about developing the relationships with the people there, that we're trying to change, like she said, change stereotypes.
Yeah.
Change what people's impression of gun owners are. And to do that, you have to have that relationship. And so I think that's why, like Di talked about, the focus for us not being, hey, let's talk about this bill or this policy. Let's just go in there as individuals, as citizens. We're your constituents. This is what we believe and think and who we are. And if they know who you are, just if I want to convince you of something in an argument,
sure,
my best bet is to make you like me.
Sure.
So I can't go in there and argue.
That is an amazing angle, and that's one thing that you know, one of my friends that got me into like the shooting and guns and stuff like that had always said is, you know, his policy is just be a nice person, and then when it comes around to voting, hopefully when they're in that voting booth, they think like, well, Dave's a nice person, and he owns guns, so
he's
maybe
not that bad.
Exactly. Maybe they're not all that bad. So
because I think there is a movement, and I don't think they're keeping it a secret. The anti-gunners are very vocal about trying to make us not necessarily us, although they're okay with making us look like the bad guys, but people who don't agree with them and that you don't have any common sense. You know, we just want common sense gun restrictions and things like that. So they use that kind of language. So it makes people who are in the middle, which is probably a majority of Americans,
right,
that they don't want to infringe upon the Second Amendment, but they don't own guns. They don't have that experience. They live in the city.
Well, they want to be reasonable.
And that a lot of them don't have the knowledge. That's the biggest part. They don't have a knowledge of firearms, and so they're just repeating old rhetoric that they've heard that just passes around, that gets passed around office to office, and they say the same old spiel and say everything incorrectly, the stuff that makes us cringe.
Oh yeah.
And each office that we went into, they all have a specific person that handles Second Amendment related topics. So
oh really?
Mm-hmm. And so it was great actually when you were able to set up an appointment. They would put their whichever I guess intern or assistant
legal assistant.
Yeah,
they're lawyers.
Come in, and they were the Second Amendment person, whether for or against. That was the person. And a lot of people, of course, in certain offices, they were very pro and super excited to see us. And then Others, they weren't necessarily, I think they were a little leery at first, but they wanted to hear what we had to say. And it was actually in one of the Democratic congressmen, one of his offices, that he said, what's neat about this is, he said, every time we see women come to DC to talk about firearms, it's always very, very negative. And he said, this is the first time we've had a group of women that are very positive as far as a whole group.
Right, yeah.
And
that makes sense.
When we were there, I think it was Moms Demand Action, or one of those groups was there.
It was at Bloomberg. I think it was every town against
every
gun
town.
violence,
which
something.
is what MDA turned into. It's
Yeah.
every town.
And so we said, we're not here to talk about policy. We just want to show you a different face of firearms ownership and just show you what we find positive of it, or find positive about it, and share our stories, whether we're a firearms instructor or a professional shooter or just an advocate of concealed carry, or maybe we've had something horrible happen to us where a gun would have saved our life, or maybe where we had girls that, guns had actually saved their life in that instance. And so just sharing their stories and just kind of basically planting little seeds. Here's a little seed of thought, and hopefully this will sit in your head for a little while, and maybe it might make you think twice.
And grow into a little bit more of an education, so.
And I think that Heather, you talked a little bit about people having their talking points and their spiel, that this is their here's our rhetoric that this is what our office is going to say. And we saw that when we all were in that meeting, and we heard Maloney talk and everything. It was a hearing on something completely unrelated in some aspects, and it was just canned phrase after canned phrase, and she just had to say all of them, and then she got up and left.
I think that's actually, I mentioned that with every single congressman that I met with after that. I said, I've never been so disappointed in my life. I said, you see it on TV and you watch the congressmen come out and make their spiel and leave, but seeing them do it in person it's just, wow, nope, that's real. That really happens.
Yeah.
That's actually how it goes down.
It was a House Oversight Committee, and the timing of our trip was completely fortuitous, but we were there the week after the Democrats had their sit-in about gun violence. We were there the week
Their
of
little temper tantrum on the floor.
Yep, and that Paul Ryan was put up some gun legislation, and that they backed off of. We were there during that week. We were there during the week that the House Oversight Committees, that she's talking about the hearing. Trey Gowdy was on it. Congressman Steve Russell out of Oklahoma City was fantastic.
Oh, he did it was the ultimate, if you could have stood up and done a clap, get him.
The slow clap.
Yeah, but we just had to.
Yeah, but we sat in on those. That had nothing really to do with why we went there, but they were going on, and we had some extra time, so we sat in on that. And the next day, Comey was there. And they had to wait in line for 2 hours to get into that hearing.
I sat in it with Dakota and her mom.
How was that?
It was amazing. I mean, just the questions they would ask, and that you see he's trying to answer the way he's supposed to answer.
Right.
Probably been advised by lawyers how you're going to answer.
Right.
And Trey Gowdy saying,
yeah,
is it true that she did this? And he said, yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing that, that just kind of blew my doors off, is that I can go in as a private citizen and I can listen to that hearing. It was surreal.
But I think that kind of it hits, again, back to why we were there, is that you as a citizen have a right to have a say in your government. That's the type of government our founding fathers set up. So we should be involved and participate, and we can't let the impressions and the stereotypes be what the media wants to put out there, and people can't change that unless they go do things like this.
Sure. And, the media is not going to put like a spotlight on you ladies doing what you do here, Rocky Mountain 3-Gun or all across the nation. So you have to actually go and do that physically face to face and meet them person to person.
And then, a lot of them, they go back to their districts and they visit, and we had some of them say, well, when are you doing a shooting competition? Or, when do you have events? And maybe if we're in town, we could stop by a Girl and a Gun clinic, or we could stop by a shooting match and see. And it's educating them about their area. Like North Carolina has a lot of the districts that I went into. I said, you realize your district has a huge competitive shooting network of precision rifle shooters, and not just hunting is huge in North Carolina, but also using AR-15s for sport. And I said, these are your constituents. These are your voting people that are, that would love to see their congressman out. And some of them are actually excited about seeing the female side of it. And as I told him, I said, for a lot of us, it's very empowering. It's a very positive sport for a lot of us. Not all of us are softball players, but some of us really like competitive shooting and excel in it. And we're able to find our voice in doing so. And it was just, showing them a different face, different side.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot from a lot of the lady shooters. It does seem like you guys have like a pretty big camaraderie, and it probably comes from finding another lady on the range where there's not very many in that type of environment. So it's cool to see a lot of competition shooters go and rally around this cause and this concept.
Yeah, we had, like she talked about earlier, we had, my goal was to get women that could actually take people to the range and provide a safe, fun, and a training experience. That's our ultimate goal, is to get people, these congressmen and these senators, out to the range.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, professional shooters, yay. But, there's not 50 professional shooters in 50 different states. So, and there's so many more. And I was really disappointed that I didn't look to the hunters. I didn't have, besides us hunting, we didn't have any really big name hunters. So we were missing 15 states. I really want to fill those states. And if I can get some hunters, I'll be really happy, because, the hunting segment of the gun owners is really disconnected when it comes to being concerned about the Second Amendment.
It's a huge portion of gun owners.
But
they're
huge.
not active.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we really, I guess that's one of the things that I hope is a byproduct of this, is that people will hear your show, or they'll see us on social media, and they'll at least open their eyes and say, maybe that's something that, if nothing else, get out and vote and do the gun vote thing.
Or maybe write a letter.
And write a letter and send an email. One of the congressmen for Eastern Carolina said, he said, you know what? He goes, so much policy comes through. He said, he said, I have my whole team looking at everything. He said, but you as a hunter or as a shooter or as a firearms owner, you might see something different that we might somehow slip through the cracks. He said, if you see something that you have a problem with, or you think might be, might be somebody trying to slide something in, email us, write us. He said, because each one of those, and that was actually something I was so shocked about, is every email, every phone call, those are logged. They have to log them. Even if you go and if you walk in and cold call an office and give your card and give information, that has to get logged. So there are people that are
I had no idea.
They are some intern or some assistant that's
we don't
just
know if there's
in.
a police squad. We know how much they get away with, so I'm sure that's probably a loose, but they're supposed to document it.
Well, they do. They had some of the assistants said that's kind of when you first come in.
That's what your job is?
That's your first job when you're the new guy, is you have to log every single email. And it's like, welcome, new guy, here you go.
Well, I went through a really traumatic experience in Colorado in 2012, where we had a lot of gun control legislation just shoved down our throat, and I always felt like my correspondence fell on deaf ears, and so at that point I was like, screw it.
They did, and I heard that from several people from Colorado, is that one of the young ladies that
went with you was one that testified in front of our
Kimberly
house.
Corbin.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but I think that's just all the more shows you why people need to physically go. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and let me interrupt there.
Go in your own state.
Yeah,
you don't have to go to DC.
To go to DC. Go ahead.
No. I'm just
And if you use because actually Tina Martin Nims, one of the North Carolina representatives, some of the offices would not be responsive. Some of the Democratic offices that we really wanted to speak with. So we found the best way to get some FaceTime with them was she would first send an email, then she'd wait a couple weeks, send a follow-up email. And then she would send, and this is when she's not getting a response at all. And then she would call. And so basically because they do track it, the more times she contacted them, they eventually, after the fourth or possibly fifth time, then contacted her and said, okay, well, we'll set something up. And,
Like, oh, this
you know,
lady
even if it
not
was
going
just,
to leave us alone.
yeah, she's not going to leave us alone. And now this looks bad because we're ignoring our constituent.
Yeah.
And so, and if you think about it, there's so many people that a lot of us, like, I hate to say, you know, there's doers and sayers, and a lot of people say, oh, they love to talk on Facebook about what they want to do, and they're very, very adamant about things. But if those people, instead of sharing memes and all the political things that you see on Facebook, if they actually apply that into writing an email, making a phone call, I think we would have at least a better presence.
Yeah, think about that. Take all the memes that one person might share in a week and say,
oh, no kidding.
How about you send just that many emails?
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is about it is like you're speaking into an echo chamber, because I don't know about you ladies, but you three fill my Facebook feed all the time, along with all these other dudes that are sharing the memes and stuff like that. And I don't see one dissenting opinion, because Facebook has decided that that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
These are my friends. And this is what, if I like Stoger shotguns or Benelli shotguns, oh, Dave's one of those 2A nuts, and they put me in this column over here, and I never see any dissenting opinions. So you're always speaking to an echo chamber until you, like you said, until you get out there and you write, put that effort into something that is, fruitful.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so like Becky was saying, you don't have to go to D.C. to meet these people. The same people that go to D.C. have home offices. So every one of them you can do this at home. You'll have 2 state senators, and you will have several congressmen in your state, but you will only have one. They're specific to their district. So that's going to be the closest one to you, most likely, unless you're in your major city, probably where your senator comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be a perfect opportunity, though, to take somebody that from a different congressional district and say, hey, let's go do this. Let's go visit them.
And they get excited. There was one of the ones that Tina and I kept trying to get an appointment with because he's in one of the largest left-swinging sides of North Carolina, and his district comes and peeks down right into where I live, and it's right across the highway. And and they're actually rezoning that area. So when we met, he was very excited to meet me, and just beyond nice, and just, oh, it's so nice to meet one of my constituents in that area, because they're going to be doing a vote, and of course they want that area.
Right.
And he did sit down and tell me, well, don't worry, young lady, we're not trying to take your guns away. We're not. We just want to make things more safe. He goes, I'm very pro-gun. I said, well, that's great. I said, but that's not what I heard in the hearing about 30 minutes ago from your friends. So, we'd like to just show you a different side, and then just put a face to the name and start building that relationship at least.
That's good.
And they really make it easy, because they all have websites, and then they all have request visit forms.
Right.
And that's the email she's talking about. You start there and say, give all your pertinent information, prove that you live there, and then say, why you want to speak to them or who you're with. They'll ask who you're with, like you're a group or organization, but I just put in citizens. So, just start reaching out and do anything you would want to do if somebody was in your life that you wanted to educate and influence. You start there.
So Becky, if you had to give like 3 basic things that someone could do, like low effort, not traveling to DC, that they could do, basic things that someone can do that's listening to this,
I would say you should have maybe save the link, save an email somewhere on your computer with your representative's contact info, so that you can, when a piece of legislation comes up, write them an email or call their office or send them a letter. Mm-hmm. And there are actually websites, and I think we had one of these on one of the DC pages. The DC project pages was a website where you can go and just enter your address or your zip code, and it will bring all that up for you. And then all you have to do is type. You can copy and paste, and you can hit them all and send it off.
So how do I write that letter? Do I start out with, I pay your salary?
No.
No?
I would start off with, I'm one of your constituents.
Okay.
And this is a piece of legislation, or this is just a general concern. Now, Heather talked about how they have to record pros and cons and all the info coming into their office. And if you contact someone in regards to a specific piece of legislation, they have to, they have to keep track of that. They have more than just like, I got 50 phone calls today.
Right.
This
That's
piece of
neat.
legislation had X number of yes, X number of no. So they track that, I
okay.
think, a little more in detail than they do just, hey, I'm a Second Amendment supporter. So in that regard, I think if you're something that you feel is important to you, then call about that specific piece of legislation. And
But if you're not that into knowing, what is current, you could still reach out to them and say, hey, I'm Joe Susie, and we live here. We have a gun range, or we like to go to the range, and we have lots of guns, and we want to express our support for.
Well, maybe not say we have lots of guns. But
We're not afraid to. Oh no.
Yeah, but say we want to express our support for the Second Amendment.
But I think one
good.
of the other gals with us, Cheryl Todd, her husband came with her, and they own an auction site and a firearm store, and they do the radio show. And I think it was neat, in terms of hey, I have a lot of guns, that their life is really built around it.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing about that too is like, hey, look, we pay a lot of taxes in your district.
There's a big economic
based on our
jobs.
Exactly.
or jobs, and so many companies are moving from certain states and moving to other states, and that's if they can bring any commerce and business to that state, that's what they want.
Members want to hear that.
And they get excited about it. And what was, I think, one of the coolest things about the DC project was we went out in February, and we were a small group, and nobody knew who we were. And then the first day, we created a buzz. And I think of all things, that was one of the coolest parts of it. Was it started out, people had never heard of the DC project, and they're just going, "Oh, great, you're with who?" And just kind of sloshed it off. And
right.
But then, as the second or third day, they knew who we were, and they had. It was spreading like wildfire that there's these women, and they got this whole other side of firearms ownership.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat that we at least left that little mark.
Yeah, she refers to the DC project because that's what it's called.
Okay.
It was real original, I know.
Just like the 3-gun show.
Yes. Yes. So you understand my pain. They're like, because we're trying to do some kind of website or some kind of social media. What do you want to call it? What do you want to call it? And I was like, I'm not the creative one. Ask Becky.
Well, I think it's cool because it doesn't say
Guns.
Yeah, it doesn't say guns.
It kind of gets us in the door.
It does. It gets you in the door. The DC project. Oh, well, what's that about? It gets the ask.
Yeah, for sure. Well, okay, so we're up against some time here. You ladies have to go walk stages, so you shoot well again tomorrow. But a couple final questions. Are you going to be doing this again? Are you going back to DC?
Everybody's looking at me.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think that after this last time when we were there, people, before we even started the meeting the night before, everyone's like, all right, so what next? And there's a point where I think you have to gather your feedback and look at everything that happens, and
that's where we're
regroup and say, okay, now where do we put our effort?
This is a very dynamic thing. It has been from the beginning, and I've taken several different winding roads, or at least forks in the road, and I'm really pleased at where it's at. I don't really know how it goes forward. Will we continue on? Yes. The DC project has a webpage called dcproject.info, and it's on a Girl and a Gun page website. It's a page on their website, I guess.
Cool.
And I would say if you want information, or if you want to follow us on Facebook and things like that. But it's not an organization. It's not something that I particularly want to grow, although several of the women do want it to grow and kind of be an organization, have board of members and things like that, or board of directors. But
I think that's what they liked about it, and I think that was we were nonpartisan. We weren't associated or affiliated with anybody, and we paid our own way there. So
very grassroots.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was grassroots movement. We're all sharing rooms and sleeping on cots and trying just to eating at pizza joints. And
because one of the first things people ask you too, though, when you come is, who are you here with? And then once guns are mentioned, they immediately their first thing is going to be something about the NRA.
Right.
And so you want to not disassociate yourself from any groups, but make them understand I'm here as your constituent, and I want to be listened to as your constituent, and that has more power than, in some ways, saying, because you're not lobbying, you're just going there to make your voice heard.
You're not like a paid shill. You're just a normal person out there for your own interest.
Yeah, and that gets a little confusing too. People think that this is a lobbying group, or that we're lobbying as a verb, and it's not. Lobbyists have to be kind of certified and document all the money that we spend, and we don't have any money, let alone we don't need to document anything because we can barely feed ourselves. But we're not spending any money on these members, that's for sure. But I kind of lost where I was going.
So this is August. We're recording this August 2016.
Okay.
Why is this important?
There's a huge election coming up in November. And Hillary Clinton has not been so, I feel like Barack Obama told us what he was going to do, and he did exactly what he said he was going to do. I just don't think people knew what hope and change, what kind of change he was really talking about. I think he knew what he was talking about. And Hillary hasn't been quiet about it at all. She has called the NRA her enemy, and that she's proud of it. And I was floored. That was in the first Democratic debate. I was floored. My mouth fell open. I was like, she just called 5-6 million people in America her enemy. And I don't think that she realizes, and this project is kind of like that. It's like, her meeting that coal miner, coming face to face with who you've demonized and who you call names. And then you realize that, you're, I guess you're not a bad guy because you are, you're talking to me like a decent human being. So,
and it's it's about perceptions, because what's their perception of you as a gun owner? Because we're told we have to take a lot of people that we might not perceive. There's a lot of politically correct things that you're told, no, the right perception is this or that, even though you might not agree with it. And
I was going to say, that was what, I hate to say disarming, but what would make them relax a lot of times is, here is a businesswoman, here is a mother of here's a mom, and some of them are, I'm a housewife.
Lawyers.
They all have all their different stories. And, when you see this nice, sweet lady in front of you that, that is not what they perceive.
Right.
And this is what you're calling the enemy. This is what you're saying is the bad guy. No, we're the good guys. We're the people that, we raise families. We try to be positive influences in our neighborhoods.
We contribute to society.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
we're good people.
And it goes back to what we were talking about at the top of this, and it's just basically, I know these nice ladies that came and talked to me in my office, and so hopefully they'll think about that when they have to vote on a piece of legislation.
Well, and that's, we're working really hard this is specifically focused on congressional members and things like that, but we in our community, in our gun community, have a huge job ahead of us. And I guess the one thing that I would encourage your listeners to do is to put a smile on your face and shake a hand, and not be so, not just be aware of how you treat people, and know that you're representing gun owners everywhere. And especially if you work in a stinking gun shop, smile when people come in. It's customer service. We were talking about this earlier. It's customer service. You need to have a smile on your face, and you need to have a positive experience when it comes to gun ownership. So we have a huge job to do, and that we can do among our own people. And treat our own people better, and treat the people that don't understand. And don't be quick to say, oh, what a dumbass. Challenge yourself to find a way to communicate with somebody who either disagrees with you or is just ignorant.
And I think, that's good, because it goes back to the people we were meeting there who, like I said, maybe the legislator doesn't handle every bit of content on the Second Amendment. So they have someone who filters it and tells them, here's this, here's that. But they might not know. When Di and Ryan and Hunter and I were out there, the bullet button thing had just happened, and we were kind of making fun of it. And but the thing is, there's a lot of people that they're so clueless. They have no resources to reach out and say, "What is this?" without looking like an idiot.
Right.
Because and we see that on the range a lot too, where you'll see a woman come up and ask a question and ask for someone to explain something, but a man won't, because they don't want to be perceived as not knowing what's going on.
Right. Well, we always do anyway, but.
So I think one of the things is, and like what Di was saying, is don't be so argumentative. Of course, this is something that we're very passionate about, but when you're speaking with people, or you're sitting at a coffee shop and guns come up and the person's very far anti-gun and you're, of course, pro-gun, try not to get so discouraged. Try not to get offended. It's not them. They're not personally attacking you. It's a policy. And of course, talking politics or, honestly, it's not political, it's constitutional, but talking about something, it does bring out emotion. And so if people can just kind of take the emotion down and if anything, try to be a little bit more positive. I think you will go so much, what is it? You draw more flies with honey.
Right.
Yeah.
Respecting people's opinion. It's saying, okay, well, I think you're coming to this from an angle that hasn't seen this. Have you thought about this? Instead of, no, you're wrong or that's stupid.
And bringing more people into the fold is difficult because, especially like you talked about with social media, they're analyzing everything and they're only showing you what you want to see. So it creates a further divide. So really try to reach outside and pull somebody new in.
I think that's the big point, is pulling in somebody new and not treating them like they're stupid if they don't understand firearms. If someone was to talk to me about woodworking, I wouldn't know the first thing, and I would seem like a complete idiot to them.
And we're completely okay with banning wood.
Jokes. So many.
I'm glad there's no other guys on the episode. Thank you.
Anti-wood.
I'm just going to ask, pine?
Thank you, Becky.
Walnut? Hardwood, softwood?
Well, it's that pine. It's the pine that's the most dangerous. Gets splinters.
But oak is okay.
Oak is okay.
White oak?
Oak are like
Red
shotguns. They're last to get attacked.
What about spalted maple?
Is particle board still considered wood?
Particle board's
OSB
horrible.
is not. There's glue in there.
It's already outlawed. All
Do
right,
you know how much cancer that could cause?
Only in California.
Okay, going back to the DC project, I know people hear this and they get excited about it because we've had that experience. But it's not. I don't want to dishearten anybody for saying that you can't participate. That's why we had the rally. We had a rally. It was very scary because we're not rally people. We had signs. We had a speaker and a podium, and we were in front of the Capitol building. It was surreal as
Corinne
well.
and I scared off a couple of teenagers.
Yeah, we had a well, what do we call that? One of the guy that came up.
Tell that story.
The guy that came up and was yelling at us.
Oh, when
what do you call him?
Corinne Mosier, when she was giving her speech, heckler?
Yeah, he was heckling.
Yeah, we had a heckler, so we were legit. But
He was saying the most wild,
something about
things.
race. Yeah,
It was something about race.
So that's why we had the rally, is so we could open this experience up to other women, because I can't manage more than 50 women, one from every state. So when I have your state filled, it's really, I do want to hear from you that you want to participate possibly, because I might need somebody in the future.
Or maybe people want to go on a state level and go together.
Yeah, people want to go on a state level, but it's just not organized at that level, and it's not an organization. So be patient if you don't hear or you don't understand what's going on. We don't either. We just try to make a difference.
But we'll tell you, go take your friends and go to see your reps.
Yeah.
Because honestly, every one of them would say how much more time they have in their state. That if you really want to invite them to the range or invite them to an event in their own state is where they have more time.
So that's probably the best course of action for anyone that's listening that's energized and thinks like, how can I help? Go ahead and get involved with your representative in your own state.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, I'm on Facebook, Dianna Muller 3-Gun.
Becky Ackley 3-Gun.
Heather Miller 3-Gun.
Sweet.
You can give
I'm
us
just Dave.
No, you're Dave.
No last
show.
name, just Dave.
Just Dave.
No, it's I appreciate you letting us talk about it, and I hope that your listeners enjoy it and get a little energized and realize that this is a final push, because Hillary will, if she wins, she will appoint a Supreme Court that will change the face of America. And I don't think it will have the Second Amendment, and I think that after the second's gone, then there's no protecting anything else.
It's absolutely true, and it's a great final thought. Ladies, I appreciate your time in neglecting the stages you have to walk, and doing this for a greater cause. So it's we don't get political on the 3-Gun Show. I set out to be apolitical, but it's so super important right now. So thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
It's not political, it's constitutional.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you, Dave.
I hope you enjoyed that show about the DC project with Becky, Dianna, and Heather. I honestly had no idea some of the things these ladies learn in DC, And I'm excited to put them into use myself, and I encourage you to do the same. Again, I'll have links to everything we talked about at 3gunshow.com/episode 90. You can support the 3Gun Show podcast by using our affiliate link when you shop at Brownells. Just go to 3gunshow.com/Brownells and shop like normal. If you like the 3Gun Show, please tell a friend about the podcast. If you see new shooters at your local match, tell them too. You'll be their hero for sharing this resource. Let's grow this thing. Let's do it together. Show someone how to subscribe in iTunes, in Stitcher, Google Play, etc., and how to leave a review. In fact, I have a review to read to you from iTunes, and it's from FW-TX, which I believe is pronounced Fwadix. Fwadix says, "Love it!" 5 stars. "Your show is great!" I just discovered it and have started listening from the beginning. I love hearing about the equipment and tactics the pros use. Keep up the good work! Well, thanks, Fwadix. I will definitely keep up the good work, and looking forward to providing more shows for you in the future here. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.